Hello, everybody. Welcome along to the Rangers Rabble podcast. We are back. Even though we had about 4 or 5 shows last week, it feels about a year since I've done this. Hello, I'm Martin, and tonight I am joined by Alan. Alan, how are you?
Good, thank you.
I don't know. I'm not going. I was going to go straight into the tab stuff, but I ain't going to bother. We'll save that for later on. Elaine, how are you?
I'm all right, thanks.
How's Molly?
Molly's good now. She's got her dinner. She's behaving. We'll see how long it lasts.
Good. And making his very first appearance is Gary. Gary, how are you?
I'm not bad, man. You?
Yeah, well, I was all right until we had that wee conversation before we started, and now I feel very angry. Yes, hello and welcome along. Thank you to everybody watching, everybody in the comments. You know I'm going to do my usual spiel before we start. Please do like and subscribe. Likes massively help share the podcast, and after the podcast is finished, just go back in and put a wee comment saying hello or some nonsense, or Martin, you're talking shite, which is usually the truth. You can help support the podcast, of course, if you're watching on YouTube. Click the join button below. Please pick the tier that suits yourself. And there's yes, CGM shameless patrons coming. It's coming. There's plenty of extra content there on YouTube and video forum for you. And of course, as CGM says, shameless Patreon plug coming up. We do have Patreon as well. That's for all your audio lovers out there. And of course, by the way, and something that I never ever mentioned, we are available on Spotify, Acast, iTunes, and all that good nonsense. I always forget to mention that. So, Elaine, how are you coping with no Rangers?
I'm all right now that I know we're getting back in. So it was a big miss over the sort of Christmas festive period, because it's always quite a highlight. But I think my worry had initially been that we were going to be out for longer. So knowing that it's next Friday, I think it's making it seem a wee bit closer. So not too bad.
That is, in fact, the wrong answer. Alan, would you like to give the right answer?
I don't know. You're going to send it to me? No, it was a massive. There was a massive sigh of relief today when I heard the news that we were getting back in. So yeah, absolutely, relief is the right answer for me.
No, the correct answer, actually, and Gary, I won't take it to you because it's your first pod and I don't want you to get anything wrong, was it was absolutely fine, because we had so much content out during the international. Is it international? No, it's winter, isn't it? Winter break.
No, winter break.
We had about, I think, 4 or 5 shows in the space of a week. So no, the answer is it was absolutely fine because the Rangers Rabble had it covered, Elaine.
Right, noted for next year when the same thing happens again.
A professional would have briefed us. So
no. People on this should be professional enough to know that's the correct answer.
I think you've known us for long enough, Martin.
Well, that's very, very true. Everybody in the comments, I hope you're well. It's good to be back. The show will go on as long as you keep commenting and giving us stuff to talk about. We've obviously got some transfer stuff, some crowd stuff, and we're going to have a wee chat about Tav as well. Although I'm thinking that's probably not the best idea. But any points you want us to bring up, anything you want us to talk about, put it in the comments and we shall certainly get to talking about it. Now, obviously, the African Cup of Nations was on earlier. Nigeria versus Egypt. Nigeria winning 1-0 thanks to an assist from, of course, the main man himself, Joe Aribo. I didn't get to watch it all. I got to watch wee bits and bobs here and there. Didn't look the greatest quality game I've ever seen. But Gary, it's probably the most important thing we have to do in January is keep a hold of Joe Aribo.
It's up there, definitely. To be honest, I wouldn't sell another player from the starting 11 or 14 players. But he's probably the best player on that team at the moment, so I wouldn't get rid of him. It'd need to be funny money.
It would need to be funny money, Elaine, but again, it's a player that can we afford to get rid of him, even if it is funny money?
Probably not, because getting into the Champions League's funny money now. So, or I don't mean getting into the Champions League, but winning the league and getting that automatic entry in. I don't think, I mean, obviously to us, he's worth mega bucks. And obviously getting, I think I had said previously that with the Nathan Patterson transfer, hopefully, A, we're not in a position where we need to sell someone, and also B, we're in a position where we've now got decent money for someone. Historically, we've kind of been lowballed for offers. I mean, even you look at Barisic, they offer, I think, 2 million. So now we've got that kind of duck off our back as well. It would have to be crazy money. And I think the fact that we now no longer need to sell, whether or not we had to sell or not, we certainly are now in a position where we don't need to sell anyone. So I would say even funny money doesn't come close to how important it is to win the league and also get that first spot and get into the Champions League, because potentially, I mean, are we going to get more than 20 million for Joe Aribo? We would all probably say we should. But that, I don't know necessarily if we would. So I think, priority number one, keep him. And obviously, if you keep him, I think that's a big step towards retaining the league.
Right. Very, very quickly, we're going to talk about this later, right? But RFC 56, we have to talk about the Deadwood. I don't know if Defoe's Deadwood. I don't think that's fair. But we will talk about some of the other players that are maybe sitting there getting a wage and not really doing anything. We'll come to that later on in the show. But Alan, Cameron makes a very, very good point. I'd rather have the player than any realistic transfer fee. Now, look, if a club comes in with if Aston Villa, because that's all that's talked about, obviously, because of Gerrard. If Aston Villa come in and go, look, Rangers, there's 30 million, we want Joe Aribo, I don't think any Rangers fan would go, right, well, we should knock that back. But in saying that, totally contradicting myself, I'll ask you the same question that I asked Gary and Elaine. Is he too important to this Rangers team this season?
Yes, absolutely. He has been so good for us this season. Cameron's comment there was, I'd rather have the player than any realistic transfer fee. I think if somebody came in around about the £30 million mark, that would be unrealistic and we'd have to take it. But if somebody came in around about the £14-15 million mark, I'd like to think with the Patterson sale, we're in a position we don't need to sell anybody. So, for me, that makes it makes it easier for us to keep a hold of players like Aribo. We're in a bit of a sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place, because as football fans we want to see him do really well at the African Cup of Nations, but the better he does, the more interest he attracts, the longer he's going to be away because they'll go on further in the tournament. But if he does really well, he might add some zeros onto his prize. The other side of that is he does badly and ends up coming back early and we get him back early, but then that might do damage long term as well. So yeah, it's a bit of a funny one with Joe Aribo just now. I just hope he stays injury free, he gets back. It's so important that we keep him. Him and Kent are probably the two players that I would think are absolutely indispensable at the minute. But there's a few players not too far behind them that I'm sure we'll talk about. But yeah, for me, Aribo stays unless it is stupid money.
Well, Fog Dog says, look, Velcro going nowhere. And that is obviously a fitting nickname because that's exactly what he is. Is this just pie in the sky, Gary, right? Maybe I'm just an old-fashioned romantic. But say a team does come in and offer Rangers money that they can't refuse. What are you laughing at?
It's just not the first thing that I thought of, but maybe you are.
Yeah, wait till I speak to Andrew. There's maybe I'm just an old-fashioned romantic guy. I'll get back to my point. Say a team does come in and offer silly money, and Rangers accept it. We're just assuming that Joe Aribo would go. There's every chance that Joe Aribo might just have a good life in Glasgow and want to stay. Or am I just being too optimistic?
Oh, there's only one person that can answer that, really. I think that would depend on the club that comes in as well. You know, if it's a top half Premiership team that's more likely going to continually get European football, he's probably going. I'd like to think if it's a lower Premiership team, he'd be more inclined to stay with the fact that we get Champions League hopefully next year. But you don't know what he's thinking. You know, money does talk, and I'd like you, I would. I'm an old romantic in the same way. I'd like to think he'd want to stay with the Rangers.
Elaine, would you like to agree with me rather than just slag me?
No, maybe I'm just cynical, but I just think in this day and age, a footballer's career is so short. They want to play at the very top. We obviously think that Rangers is the pinnacle, but I think that money talks, and even I think most Premier League sides coming in would be at least attractive for him. Potentially Champions League swings it if we were to win the league this season, and you might think stay around for another year, but I just think money talks. So I think if we got an offer we were happy with, and he got a serious money offer, then I think he'd be off.
Not just money, but geographical location as well. I think if one of the top London clubs were to come in for him, I think it would be he'd probably want to head back down to London at some point in his career. So we've got to consider that as well.
But he's still getting picked from Nigeria. A lot of the times, was it Barisic, the manager says, look, if you want to get back in the team, you have to leave Rangers or stuff like that. So he's still getting picked for his national team. If he's got a good life, if he's making a comfortable living at Rangers, you just never know. Nah, there's no chance. Alan, CJ makes a point. We've spoke so often about how much we don't have to sell. But CGM says, look, if anybody offers 20 million for anyone, then they'll be on the next mega bus out of Glasgow. If somebody's offering 20 million and they have to get the mega bus, there's an issue there. But do you go along with that, Al? That if any of our players, if anybody offers 20 million, it's thanks very much, see you later?
Yeah, I think that's exactly where we are. Not just Rangers, but I think that's the sort of... It goes to show you where Scottish football is and how far behind we are our English counterparts. Financially, we've took a lot of pressure off ourselves with the Patterson sale, but I think if any club was to come in and say we're going to offer you £20 million for any one of our players, I think the club would take it. Hopefully we'd see a good chunk of it getting reinvested back into the playing squad, but yeah, I think we would take it in a heartbeat, and I don't think we're alone in that. I think the mob the other side of the city are in exactly the same position, but that's just where we are as a country. And do you know what? I think if somebody offered £20 million for any one of our players, I don't think we as a fan base would grumble about it that much. I'd be quite happy to get £20 million for a couple of our players if that's the going rate.
I think the reality, sorry Alan, just to say what you said, but if we were to get 20 million for anyone, obviously the aim of the season is to finish first and the money at the Champions League. If we combine that, that's an insane amount of money for a club of ours to really reinvest and to go and put us in a great place for years to come. Obviously, the worry would be that we don't, but if we were to make 20 million on anyone and come second, the gap that potentially could open up should we come second is then reduced as well. Because I suppose that's the kind of fear factor in not getting first place this year. That's why first place is so important, not just winning the league, but it's the gap that the other team could open up and the impact that could have for years to come. So yeah, I definitely just don't think we're in a position, I don't think any club in Scotland's in a position to turn that down for both those reasons.
We've spoke about Aribo, I think, every podcast on this since basically the start of the season. Gary, as it's your first, Joe Aribo aside, because in my opinion, he's the most improved player at the club. He's probably our top player. Is there anybody else that you would be worried if we lost, or are you quite comfortable with the squad that we've got? If we lose one or two, we'll be fine. But is there that two other players that you think we can't go on without them?
Like I said earlier, probably the 14 sort of players I wouldn't sell unless it was funny money, just because of how big this year is. It's unless they had someone ridiculous lined up to come in and replace them. Kent he seems to start a season a bit poor, gets injured, comes back and he's brilliant again. And Morelos, he's starting to hit his form again. We've seen Bronkhorst talking about how important Mackay's been with him, and they're all starting to kick on since he's walked in the door, and I just can't see us selling anyone else really, unless it's funny money.
I know we'll need to invest in, I think, get Gary a mic, Elaine. I think we'll need that the old headset.
I'm not in a position to slag anyone's technology. So
no, you're certainly not.
Is it crap?
That's better. See if you just look down for the rest of the podcast. That would do.
Martin, you do the same.
Yes, not here. I know. I've got a mask. I'm going to bring. This isn't the way that Rangers are going to go anymore. It's just not going to happen, Elaine. But CGM saying, I would love us to sign someone a bit outrageous not just squad filler stuff. Like, not squad filler. Obviously, we want to bring in players that are going to go straight into the first team that are going to improve. But I can't see Rangers going down the outrageous route again of even a Kent 7 million. I just don't see us spending that kind of money.
Not at the moment. I think we would have to be losing someone to be spending that money. I know we were talking about potentially, or there was a wee bit of chat about what 5-6 million for someone. Was it from Roma? Am I going to show myself up here? I just don't think that. Yeah, that's exactly what I was doing. I don't think we'd be spending. I don't think we'd be spending big money on anyone. Should it be unless we're losing someone else? I think we'll see a bit of the Patterson money, but I don't think we'll see a massive chunk of it.
I love to try and put people off when they're making a point. It's great because
you do it so well.
You can see what was I saying? What was I saying? Right, let's get to the point for RFC 56 because he's put it in a few times. Al, up to us to move the Deadwood. Again, I don't agree with the Defoe thing, right? But maybe I'm wrong. On his, he's on the contract for the next 4 months. Who would you like to see is? And again, I don't like to do this because I don't think it's fair on players. We don't know the circumstances behind the scenes, but we do have several players that don't play that sit and take a wage. Is there anybody you would like to see Ross Wilson kind of shift out January? If not January, definitely end of season.
I don't think there's anybody I'd like to see shift out because everybody deserves a sort of chance. But yeah, if we're talking about getting rid of maybe not Deadwood, but people that are taking a wage and not really contributing much to the first team, then yeah, Defoe could maybe fit that bracket. He's not really contributed much to the first team. Neither has Jack Simpson or Brandon Barker or the luckiest man in professional football, Andy Firth.
Andy Firth,
luckiest man. Getting paid however many grand a week to hang about with Alan McGregor during the week and then go to Ibrox at the weekend and watch Rangers. Luckiest man in professional football. So yeah, if we're talking about saving a bit of money and getting them off the books, because if that means bringing somebody else in, if that means getting one of the players we've been linked with, then yeah, I'd be quite happy with that. And if we have to fill the squad with other players, then we've got, if we need players to go on the bench, we've got plenty of young players that are chapping in the door of the team as well. So, we can give them a chance instead of paying wages for players that, we can offload to Middlesbrough on loan or release, or God knows what Brandon Barker's doing. He's another guy. It's just you seem to forget he's there, and I think the club's forgot he's there as well. So yeah, I wouldn't have an issue with any of those guys going. We're not going to miss them.
I know we've got players. I mean, Jake Hastie, a signing that I will never ever understand. Clearly was never brought in to be part of the first team, get shipped out on loan, and then we've just completely forgot he existed. But Gary, Brandon Barker, I kind of feel sorry because I call it the Philip Sebo effect, right? For me, there's a player there somewhere that will eventually come out, but obviously never does happen. But look, is Alan right? Is it Barker, Defoe, Firth? Are these guys that we need to try and get moved on?
Barker and Firth, yeah. I'd be inclined to keep Defoe around a bit. Yeah, just because Ruth, you don't know whether he's going to be injured 1 week, fit the next. Sakala I'd prefer as a winger rather than a striker, so I'd definitely keep Defoe around the place. But Barker, I think he needs to go.
The problem, Elena, is how do you and look, I've said before about Ross Wilson, we'll see what he's made of in the transfer windows. How do you, as Ross Wilson, go to a club and go, we've got these 3-4 players here.
Please take them.
Take them. When let's be honest, I mean, I don't know the exact figures and I won't say a figure because it's not fair. I've heard Brandon Barker's on a decent wage at Rangers. Well, how do you get rid of them?
Oh, I think that's part of the problem and I think that's part of where, if you go back a couple of years, we've historically got it wrong, especially when we were kind of going further down the divisions or moving our way up, on the basis that we would give silly contracts and silly money. And then you're in the basis of, these people or these players, they're weighing it up. It's a wee bit like what we're saying about Aribo, that money talks. And if we're giving people silly wages, then why would you move on to a team that aren't going to be have the facilities? You're still obviously backing yourself, thinking you're going to get a chance at Rangers, but also you're not going to be on anywhere near the same money. Just in that kind of in a similar vein, and I'm not saying it's deadwood. I'm not kind of opening a whole can of worms. I wouldn't be totally against moving Lundstram on the basis of the reported wages that he's on, in terms of wages versus benefit to the team. And I'm not saying that he's deadwood, because he did, especially at the start of the season, I know he kind of split everyone. I just think, given the reported wages, we could perhaps invest that somewhere better in the team.
I was going to come back to Defoe.
Mama agrees.
Yeah, I agree. We'll all come back to Lundstram in 2 seconds, because that's a good point. But Alan, is it not worth having Defoe around the place just for the simple fact of his experience, his knowledge, and the fact that he does help out coaching?
I think he's been taken off the coaching team, hasn't he?
When I say coaching, I mean coaching as he goes. Like for Morelos, for example, apparently they've got a fantastic relationship.
Have that experience roundabout it will be valuable. And as Gaz said, what other strikers, you could pick apart our strike force and see that we're maybe are a bit thin. Sakala's better as let's call it an inside forward, for lack of a better phrase. Roof, you never know if he's going to be fit or not. So if Morelos isn't there for whatever reason, whether he's injured or suspended, Defoe suddenly becomes, your first or second choice striker. So, having that around the place isn't going to be, out of all those players, he would probably be the one that you would consider keeping the most. So yeah, Defoe's certainly, there's definitely an argument there that you keep Defoe around. But again, as Elaine said, you weigh up the money that's been given to the player, compared that to what they're bringing to the team. Maybe Defoe has to go to bring in somebody else. That will deliver more for the team. You just don't know. But there's certainly an argument there for him.
Well, look, Rangers on tour have made a brilliant point, and that's not the point I was going to think is why have Defoe when we have Mackay? He's got more experience. Well, I know that if we manage to somehow, Gary, get rid of Defoe, I don't like saying getting rid. That doesn't sound good, because Defoe has been a good player for us. I would imagine that frees up a good bit of wages, and of course we do have Roy Mackay, who in his day was a phenomenal striker.
Yeah. I'd still be inclined, because his contract's up at the end of the season, isn't it?
I think so. Is it 4? Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't see the harm in keeping him around for the rest of the season at all.
I forgot about that. That's a good point. No, so
I would keep him.
I think this is probably, Defoe finishing up, certainly. I think the role, I think he was probably given the role with Gerrard on the basis that it would be his last season and kind of wind him into coaching. And obviously, if Gerrard's not here, I would see Defoe probably retiring at the end of the season, especially with how much punditry he's doing and whatever. Mm-hmm. So on that basis, I would keep him around. The experience that he brings, I think actually the professionalism he brings is huge. It's someone of his age who's still in the shape that he is and still able to do a job at a top level. I don't think we'll necessarily see him play again, but for the couple of months left, I'd keep him about.
Yeah, I know. And prime time in the comments, we're not in a position to be sentimental or sensitive about players. All players need to be adding value on the pitch. That's absolutely right. Elaine, back to your point about Lundstram. Barisic took 18 months to adapt to Scottish football, and we've seen how good Barisic then became after that. Are we all maybe just a wee bit too quick to judge him?
Oh, I think we're probably one of the worst. We're terrible at it. We jump on people's backs so quickly. And I think I've said before, Ibrox is a brilliant place when you're winning, when you're doing well. We can be a really, really critical fan base as well, and we tend to kind of fixate on someone. And I think Lundstram got it really tight at the start of the season. Obviously, Gerrard kind of picked up and had a few, not swipes necessarily, but I'm sure there was one interview where he picked up on Lundstram and the sort of, I wouldn't say abuse he was getting, but just the fact that he was being talked about quite a bit and talked down. But I'm just not convinced. I don't know. He obviously did come onto a game a bit at the start of the season. I'm not just a massive fan, but by all means, it's just and I'm basing that purely on just the amount of money that he's apparently on. I think he's one of the top earners at the club, but that's all reported. I could be totally wide of the mark there.
I would imagine, Alan, that coming from the EPL, albeit I think they were relegated that season that he came. I can't really remember. He will be on a decent wage, and look, fair play to the guy. You go where you're going to get a decent wage. Is that also maybe part of the problem? Like, he's came from down south. He's came a bit of a reputation. As my dog now goes mental beside me.
That's not Molly.
He comes with a bit of a
Not guilty.
reputation. Well, it's a nightmare. He's standing there with a curtain over his head like that. He looks like he looks funny. He's came with that reputation, Alan, and we're just too quick to go. Well, he should be doing better than what he is.
He certainly, he's came with a reputation, but just because you're playing in the English Premier League doesn't make you a world class player. We talk about in Scotland, we like to talk about all the Scotland starting 11 that are playing in the English Premier League, and as just because you're playing in the English Premier League doesn't mean that you're going to be a team of world class players playing for Scotland. And I think you made an interesting point about us being critical of him early on. In his time at Rangers and comparing that to Barisic, and it was a model under Gerrard that we brought players in and they improved over time. Barisic wasn't the only one. Just trying to think of another couple off the top of my head. Even Joe Aribo improved over time. Yanis Hadji improved over time. Ryan Kent improved over time under Gerrard. That was his model. It was bringing players in, getting them confidence to play the way he wanted them to play, and they got better. I don't know if that'll be the same tactic that Van Bronckhorst uses. Van Bronckhorst might want players coming in that hit the ground running, in which case, people like John Lundstram coming in and struggling for the get-go will not bode well for him. But yeah, I think we maybe we were quick to criticise him. We were probably overcritical because we should have by that time been accepting that was Gerrard's model. That's how he saw his team progressing. And he had just won the league. We just won the title, so we should have had every faith in him. And Lundstram might come good. I don't think he's not the first name on the team sheet every week, but I see an improvement since the start of the season, so maybe he will come good for us. But if the wages is an issue, and somebody down south wants him, I think he'll be one of the first ones to go.
See, we're talking about this, Gary, and what always slips my mind is now, and it shouldn't, because I run the Rangers podcast, we've got a new manager, of course, with Gio. So we don't know the way that Gio really wants his midfielders to play yet. We've seen small glimpses, but for all we know, in 2 months' time, Lundstram could turn into prime Xavi. It all depends on the coaching, the way the manager. I know it's an over-exaggeration, but you get my point. So is it just a case of Gary? Just look, hold fire. Wait and see how the players are even at the end of the season under Gio.
Again, I'd be inclined for the end of the season. I don't think what helped Lundstram was the size of the game that he mucked up in. That was a big game for us, and it was never going to go down well. And he was always going to be on the runs for that one. I had a mate who's a Sheffield United fan. And when I said we were looking at him, he said he would drive him up here himself. So that wasn't a good start. But no, like you said, Van Bronckhorst might improve him. I hope he improves him. But again, at end of the season and then re-look at it. So
you shouldn't always believe what people tell you, because apparently, and I don't listen to it, and I wouldn't advise anybody to listen to it, but apparently last night on Clyde, a certain Mr. Hugh Keevins got very angry about a Birmingham journalist who came on to talk about some American boy or Australian boy. Apparently he got very, very angry. Those who know what I'm talking about are probably pissing themselves laughing. Elaine, CGM, don't give up on Lundstram. Kamara will leave in the summer and Lundstram will be able to do that role next season with the benefit of having a season behind him. That's a big shout for CGM.
Possibly. Do you know, I'm not being overly critical, and I'm not saying he would be the first person that I would sell or anything like that. It's just going back to the possible wages and in terms of getting value for money. And it's more, I suppose, being realistic about who we might get offers for. Because as you were saying, how do you offload a Brandon Barker or how do you offload someone who's not been in the squad, let alone the team? Whereas it's maybe more realistic to think that we will get offers for someone who has been playing. And if we look at it with Patterson, that was ideal in a way, because I know that that's what a few people, when people would have kept him, or some people wanted to keep him because of the potential. But that sale doesn't massively affect our first team. And Lundstram has been in it far more than Patterson. And is there or thereabouts. But it's just in terms of realistic people to sell, in terms of balance in the books and all that sort of thing, that would probably be the one that makes a bit of sense to me. But he absolutely might come good, and I hope. And you've got to trust the coaching staff. We've seen an improvement in all the players since they came in, so we've got to hope that actually, if they kick on, I could be totally wide of the mark, and come the end of the season, we'll hold my hands up.
And Scott, sometimes it can take players time to settle, no matter where they've played before. That's very true. It took Kerr a long time to settle into being able to do podcasts properly, but eventually he got there. So it takes people time to settle. Right, let's have a look at some ins, Alan. One player I was very, very surprised to see us linked with, and I know that obviously Jamie Duff helps out a lot on the podcast. There's a wee bit of hosting. Is a massive Dundee United fan. He's not really, but we'll wind him up about it. Benjamin Siegrist, surprising link for you? Is that just paper rubbish, or is that a realistic transfer you can see?
I think it's realistic. He's probably not the type of player that would have been linked to if he wasn't playing in Scotland. But the fact that he's came to Scotland, he's done relatively well at Dundee United. He's anytime I've seen them play, which I must admit isn't very often, anytime I have watched them, he seems to have good games for them. So the fact that he's right under our noses, it doesn't surprise me at all that he's been linked with other teams, bigger teams in Scotland than the one that he's at. So I see it happening. It's low risk. I don't see him coming in and being our first choice, if I'm being perfectly honest. But, it's low risk.
On that, Alan, if he's not coming in to be the first choice, low risk or not, what's the point in signing him?
Because you need a backup goalkeeper.
But you've got McLaughlin and you've got McCrory. So where does Siegrist come in there?
If I'm being perfectly honest, well, it's going to be it looks like it's going to be a pre-contract, so he won't be here until the summer. It is widely expected that Alan McGregor's going to retire. John McLaughlin, again, is widely expected that he'll take over as number one unless we go and spend money on a goalkeeper. And as much as I like Robin McCrory, I just don't think that he's rated too much at Ibrox, and I don't think he'll be around much longer. So I wouldn't be surprised if we sign Siegrist, if McLaughlin was the number one and Siegrist was the backup next season.
Gary, John McLaughlin, I've got nothing bad to say about the guy. Every time he's come in, he's been brilliant. But is he a number one goalkeeper for Rangers?
I don't see why not. I've always liked him when I've seen him play. He's good. He's definitely better with the ball at his feet than McGregor, that's for sure. No, I'd give him the number one jersey if McGregor's not there next year. If we get Siegrist in, I don't know enough about him. I've seen him play against us, and he's always looked good. But then every goalkeeper in Scotland always looks good against us. No, I'd give McLaughlin. I think McLaughlin deserves a shot as number one.
Do you know can you argue with that, Alain? Every single time John McLaughlin's come in, he's always looked comfortable to me. I can't, off the top of my head, I cannot think of a single mistake that he's made.
Probably not. That I don't know. Alan caught me off guard a wee bit there, just because I just hadn't actually given much thought to the fact that McLaughlin would be our number one, and I was kind of more thinking that if McGregor was going, I was in the thinking of why would we sign another backup? Why wouldn't we go for someone who's going to be our number one keeper? And to be honest, I probably can't argue with the guys in saying he's fairly solid and reliable and dependable. He's definitely better, as you say, with the ball at his feet and his out ball. But to me, he's not McGregor, and to me, that's going to be a downgrade. And I know that it'll be quite difficult to get,
How much would
another
a
Al
McGregor
McGregor
cost us,
straight in.
Elaine?
Too much.
Hmm.
Which is possibly, and and the thing that's maybe being harsh on John McLaughlin, because when's he ever had a proper run of games? So like anyone, more games, more confidence, and it has always been dependable. So yeah, you're probably right. I just hadn't actually given it much thought previously.
No, sorry, Al.
Sorry, I see a lot of people commenting that Siegrist, for example, isn't Rangers quality, and what's in my head, the way I'm thinking is whether it's John McLaughlin's the number one or whether Van Bronckhorst signs somebody else and brings him to be number one. And this is going to sound stupid, but think back to the kind of role Theo Snelders played when he came to Rangers. He's a backup goalkeeper. He'll cover injuries from time to time, play the odd league game. That's the kind of role I see Benjamin Siegrist playing for Rangers. I don't see him being a number one playing 40 games a season. I see him being that backup, dipping in and out the team when he needs to, being reliable and steady, but not a top goalkeeper for us. That's the kind of role I see him playing.
Well, I mean, if that's the case, Gary, and we've got, just say John McLaughlin is number one, is McCrory good enough to be number two, or is McCrory for you good enough to be number one?
I wouldn't say McCrory's good enough to be number one. No, I think he needs another couple of years of maybe getting the odd cup game here and there, something like that. But going to the McLaughlin thing, when's McLaughlin's contract up? His is up.
Is it the end of the season?
I had it in my head it was the
100%
end of the season.
That's what I thought. So there's not even anything to say that McLaughlin's going to be at the club.
Is that twice in your first podcast, Gary, that you've made me look stupid?
I could be completely wrong and make myself look stupid.
The record's 17.
Just something in the back of my head.
No, his contract does. Well, according to Google straight away, contract expires May this year. So there's nothing to say that, he'll necessarily be here.
I will see. Well, there you go, Alan. That makes a lot of sense. I was looking at a goalkeeper then. So I'm talking absolute nonsense.
Yeah, I think either way we'd be looking at a goalkeeper because I think it's pretty obvious that, or it certainly seems obvious that McGregor's going to be retiring. So, yeah, we might bring one in on a pre-contract to be the backup. We might go and spend money and bring a second one in. There's only one man going to be able to answer that question right now. And it's probably Elaine's dog, even though Elaine's dog is a female. And that's obviously why she's... Gary... Fog Dog, let's be honest, we're a bit snobby when it comes to signing SPL players. Is that fair? Are we too snobby as a fan base?
We probably can be. I wouldn't say I am. There's a few players in the country I'd take. If they're good enough, I don't see. If the money, the problem with Scotland is a lot of clubs aren't going to sell us unless it's big money again. Like there was a lot of talk on the group chat the other night about Martin Boyle. Hibs aren't going to sell him to us for cheap, so there was no even any point looking at that. But we probably could be snobby about it. There's like some of the comments about the John Souttar ones being stupid that I've read about him not being Rangers good enough. John Souttar's a quality centre back. End of conversation there, in my opinion.
Okay, well, there you go. You've just took my next talking point because I was going to ask Alan if we were too snobby, and then when Alan said yes, because Alan is biggest snob I know, I was going to say, is John Souttar, Alan, good enough for Rangers?
I'm going to say yes, if he can stay fit. I think he's a low risk signing. He's another low risk signing. He's only going to cost us a wage by the looks of it. He's not going to cost us a transfer fee. He can come in. We know he can play at the level of Scottish football. Okay, he's untested in Europe, but we might go and spend the money on players to complement him there. And who's to say he doesn't deserve a shot in Europe because we know he's good enough to play in Scottish football. I think sometimes we can be too snobby. We see we sometimes get linked with players that's got a Scottish name and we automatically think we should be going and signing somebody with an Italian name. And that's we have had that problem at Rangers for a long time. Probably going back to Dick Advocaat's spell, we just assumed that foreign players were better.
Everything, didn't it? Dick Advocaat's
we just assumed foreign players were better. And don't get me wrong, a lot of them were back then. But yeah, we can, just because somebody's playing with Hearts doesn't mean that they're not going to be good enough to come in and play with Rangers. And as I say, John Souttar, for me, we know he can play at this level. So yeah, low risk signing. As long as we can keep him fit, that's
the big thing. I'm going to come to you because that's something that you spoke to me, Elaine, about before we started about Souttar's injuries. Firstly, the reason I've kept that comment up, Elaine, who is the best player on that comment?
Oh,
sorry, I think you should probably ask guys because me and Elaine know what you want the answer to be.
No, Elaine, who is the best player on that comment? Everybody watching in the comments, who's the best player on that comment? Right, Elaine? For people listening on Spotify, iTunes, etc., we've got Ryan Jack, Scott Wright, Neil McCann, Kevin Thompson, and David Robertson. So, Elaine, who's the best player in that comment?
Gonna go Neil McCann. Sorry,
Gary.
I absolutely love Neil McCann. He's one of my favourite Rangers players of all time. So I'm going Neil McCann.
Yeah.
Alan.
Yeah, Neil McCann's a standout. All other answers are wrong. Let's move on.
Fogdog got it right. Fogdog got it right. It was, of course, the correct answer was, of course, David Robertson. There we go. Danilo Doki. Gary, tell me all about him.
Don't know anything about him.
I was just so glad you said Gary there.
In fact, sorry, Elaine, I took it away for you. John Souttar. Let's discuss that very, very quickly, and then we'll go on to Doki, and then we'll go on to the crowds, and then we'll try and finish with a wee bit of Tav. John Souttar's injury concerns, is that a worry for you?
Yeah, definitely. I was listening to, as you were saying, apologies, Clyde the other night, and they were saying, there's two ways of looking at it. One, he's injury prone. He's 26 next month, and he's had 3 Achilles injuries and I think an ankle injury. Obviously, the fact that he's back playing, at a good level, at top level, and we're serious about him, shows brilliant mental strength and brilliant to get back from that. But that would be my big question mark around that, about whether or not we can keep him fit, because obviously we've got a few people that are kind of injury prone as it is, and does that just add a bit of a headache? So yeah, I mean, good luck to him.
That is a worry. David Robertson, Curry Muncher, of course, you're absolutely spot on. I'm not even bringing up the people who didn't say David Robertson. We've got David Alexander who said Robbo. That is, of course, the correct answer. Right, Alan, I'll come to you then. Danilo Doki, 23 years old, plays for I'm so bad with pronunciations. Vitesse, he's the captain. He's got 5 under-21 caps. I was not reading that off a webpage. That was all in there. Again, it's one of these ones. I don't know much about him, but we've been linked to him. Is it just because he's Dutch, or is there a chance of this happening?
I think probably the fact that he's Dutch helps, because Van Bronckhorst will know that market better than anybody in Scotland. Although I think we were linked with him before Van Bronckhorst came along, actually. But yeah, it doesn't surprise me that the link's still there if that is the case, because, as I said, he will know that market better than anybody in Scotland, and I think we'll be linked with a lot of Dutch players, or a lot of players from the Dutch league between now and the end of January, and then again in the summer. And we'll probably bring a couple in, so it's a very realistic possibility. I did see that PSV are interested in him, right enough. So
of course they're interested in everybody being interested.
Yeah, that might be a bit of a sticking point. But yeah, I don't know. I've never seen him play. I don't know much about him, other than the stats that you've just rhymed off the bit of paper you've got in front of you.
No, it was actually opened on a tab on my computer.
So yeah, I don't really know much about him, but if Van Bronckhorst is looking at him, if it's a player he knows, and he's decided to go and look at him, then obviously it rates highly of him. So if he comes in, then he'll deserve the chance that the manager gives him.
And Molly, if I could just ask you about Doki.
You coming up? She'll agree to anything at the moment.
I tell you, by the way, the Rangers rabble,
professional
and dogs. It's just
sorry.
It's going to be It's going to be like this until the end of time. I
think. She's normally so good, and she just snoozes and not playing ball tonight at all.
Without opening a massive can of worms, Gary, Doki, look, he comes very highly recommended. We will hopefully be speaking to somebody at the weekend and giving everybody an update, a bit like we did with the James Sands. We had a couple of guys on, we spoke about that. Is Doki quite possibly for you a replacement for, dare I say it, Connor Goldson?
I don't know, because I've not seen the boy play. He looks big and strong. I don't know if he's good in his feet, because one thing you can't say about Goldson is he is good at spraying those balls about. I don't know. I really don't know, because I've not seen enough of the guy at all. And if Goldson's going, then we need to bring probably 2 centre backs into the club.
See, what you do is, and this is what everyone does, this is why it's podcasting in general is successful. You just make it up. You just pretend you know. You just say, oh, I seen him. And he was like prime Rio Ferdinand. And oh, yeah, he's going to be excellent. And then we get somebody on who knows what they're talking about and we all look stupid. Right, Elaine, crowds are back. Surprise, surprise.
Hallelujah.
Yes. How are you feeling about it?
Oh, buzzing.
And we'll come to the caveat in a minute.
So no, I am absolutely buzzing for it. I miss it a lot. I think we all do, and we all know that it's the football we go for primarily, but it's everything else. It's the folk that we see. It's what we go with. It's everything about it. And yeah, just miss it. And as I said at the start, my worry was definitely that it wasn't the 3 weeks, and it wasn't just going to be until the 17th of January or whenever the date was. My worry was that we were going to experience something like we did last year, where it goes on, and every Tuesday or whatever it is, we're waiting, with bated breath, thinking, is this it? And it's just, we're not going to get back in. So yeah, thank goodness. I can't wait to get back. I can't wait to just push on, because it seemed as if we were getting a bit of momentum, and it seemed as if things were starting to click, especially with Gio. It just seemed like it was starting to click. So I hope that we're not going to have any winter break demons, as previously seen. But most importantly, I can't wait to get back.
The big thing, Alan and Curry Muncher has. It sounds like it looks like he's getting into a bit of a row, doesn't it? But, no, Martin, only certain people are allowed to go to football. This is obviously in reference to, you have to have your booster now, apparently, according to Heart and Hand tweeted out about it, didn't they? And is it 50% of people now are going to be tested?
It has to be 4 months. If you've had your second vaccine for more than 4 months, you have to have your booster.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Without getting into politics, my first thought was this is blackmailing more people into getting boosters. But let's not get into the politics of it. But yeah, so now fully vaccinated, basically in a nutshell, fully vaccinated now means 3 doses instead of 2, which I don't want to say I told you so, but I did mention quite a few times, to not just on our chats, but to my pals as well, that the only reason I'm going for a booster is because I think they're going to make it mandatory for travel and getting into the football. So delighted I went for the booster a couple of weeks ago. Delighted I was lying on my bed in a well wait for a couple of days. Makes it worthwhile. But yeah, I think it's there to blackmail people. But people will go for it. People will go for it for those very reasons that I said. To get to events, not just football, to get to any events, to get travelling. And yeah, the massive relief today when I saw the news come up and I read the story. It was a relief. As Elaine said, it's, we all go for the football because we support our team, whoever you support. But it's not just about the football, is it? It's about the people you go with, the days away, the trips away, the memories you make. It's what I can't speak for everybody. It's what I do to switch off and go, just get away from everything and forget about work for a day and go to the football, and to have that back. It's not the same. We can watch games on the telly if they're on, but it's not the same for me. It's not anyway. So yeah, absolutely. There was a massive sigh of relief when I read the story today and saw the news breaking. And I just hope that this is it now. This is it. We're back at the football. We thought that was going to be it the last time. It didn't seem to be. I know there was comments getting made by some of our politicians about learning to live with COVID going forward. So hopefully that means this is going to be the end of it, and we're going to get on with our lives and with any luck, this is us back at football. We don't need to worry about. We don't need to have conversations like, I wonder when we'll get shot out again. We can just go on with it.
I know Stuart Melvin agrees with you. He just simply says emotional blackmail. It's going to affect people who don't want to get the vaccine and stuff like that. I completely understand that. I had to go for my booster in order to go to Dortmund because Germany are very, very, very strict. But yeah, look, I totally understand people who don't want to get the vaccine or whatever. It's your own personal choice. But yeah, you can't. Unfortunately, Rangers' hands will be tied. It won't be down to Rangers about the whole. So I'd imagine that would be a government initiative as well. But Gary, does it just show? I mean, that's been 3 weeks since they stopped football. They brought the winter break forward early. The fact that it's gone from 500 to full stadiums again in such a short space of time, does it show just what a stupid, ridiculous decision it was?
Yeah, they've got egg on their faces with this one. I'd be interested to hear what Scottish Rugby, because they were talking about moving games down south, whether that swayed any arguments, because they'd look stupid if you had 50,000 Scottish fans in an English football stadium playing rugby somewhere. Don't know how much sway that had in the argument, but they looked daft. I'm more trying to see how this 50% is going to go. Like, how are they going to manage that? That's absolutely. We're going to need to show up like an hour and a half before the game kicks off to get in for kickoff. It's bonkers.
Were we not told this before, that so many people? So
we weren't told 50%.
Not 50%, but
I think
percentage.
It was 25. Was it not 25%?
Yeah. I'll be
honest,
at Ibrox, I've got asked for it once, and the person that asked for it never even looked when I showed them it. And I think it'll be much the same. To be honest, it'll be a token gesture.
But the club have to do. The club. Sorry, Elaine. Hands are tied. They have to be shown to be doing something. If I can get that sentence out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Do you know, I understand people's frustration. I understand both sides in terms of the vaccines, but also people not wanting to get it. But that said, it's out of the club's hands. The club can't physically, it's a government set. I presume it'll be legislation. It's government set rules, laws, if you like. The club, I know people who think or feel particularly strongly about it want the club to come out and make a strong stance. There's no way you're winning that one. And the thing is, the club want everyone back. Realistically, they just need to play ball. I would agree with Alan. I've had my vaccine passport checked, I think, twice at Ibrox, but both times it's people who have an almost unmanageable job. I mean, you know what it's like 10, 15 minutes trying to get through the turnstiles. And the turnstiles at Ibrox at the best of times when people don't know whether they, whether you're putting your card in or swiping it or whatever it is. So it's a cursory glance. And the reality is that, I don't think there's a way of doing it that's going to be viable to do 50% of the larger stadiums. I don't know how that works.
No, and look, CGM, this whole subject bores me. I am fed up with COVID and all that goes with it. I think like 99.9% of people are aware of their CGM. But unfortunately, fortunately, we're a Rangers podcast. Unfortunately, when stuff like this comes out, we have to talk about it because it's Rangers news. And it's been on our fucking dealing with our lives. I can't even get the right words out, so let's just move on before I make myself look stupid. Alan, James Tavernier.
Why'd you come to me first?
Yes, let's go there. James Tavernier. Connor, is he a legend? Is it even up for debate?
I have got skills on my arse for sitting on the fence here. I think James Tavernier has been a fantastic servant to Rangers Football Club. He came in a very difficult period. He was probably the scapegoat for some bad performances at times under previous managers. Let's not forget, he's now played under 4 Rangers managers. He stuck it out. He improved incredibly. We saw him score some great goals for set pieces. We saw him get some great assists. We know how good he can be going forward. He was the captain that led us to the league title last season. He we know that there were defensive frailties, particularly when it came to defending at the back post. But we can't say that he's not a great player just because he makes a few mistakes here or there, because everybody makes mistakes here or there. But before we came on, as Gas says, it was his comment. I'll give him the credit for it. I'm very similar to him. I don't like talking about current Rangers players and legendary status, because we don't know how the Rangers spell's going to end. It might come to a disastrous end and we're talking about them in a different light in a couple of months' time or in a year's time. But yeah, he's certainly in my opinion, he should be at least right now be very, very, very highly thought of.
Yeah, look, very, very quickly before we carry on, please, 265 people still watching 55 minutes into this. Phenomenal. Thank you so much. Please do like, and if you haven't already, subscribe. The last time I checked, we were 31 subscribers away from 4,000. Woo! And as you can see, when I get my hair cut, it looks horrendous. So I'll just let my hair grow again. Please do like and subscribe. Listen, Gary, you're allowed for 4 months to have a shocking hairdo, and then you need to change it. So please do like and subscribe. It's greatly, greatly appreciated. We are on Patreon. There's a YouTube join button down below to get extra content as well. All links are in the description. Follow us on Twitter. What else are we on? Facebook, Instagram. We're on Instagram. I should know all this. Please go and follow on those places as well. Right, Elaine, Tav, do you know what? Maybe that's an absolute fair point from Alan. It's hard to call somebody a legend when they're still playing at the club, I suppose. But if Tav was to retire tomorrow, how would you remember him?
As the captain that led us to probably the most important league title, or one of the most important league titles that we'll ever win. I would definitely put him in the Hall of Fame for that. But I don't think everyone in the Hall of Fame is a legend. I think that's a big word. I just don't know if legend. I don't think a club can have that many legends. And I think when you compare, who do I really, really think of as a Rangers legend? Probably not. But I would put him in the Hall of Fame. And so I'm probably just joining Alan right on that fence there.
I just want to say, Elaine, it makes a really good point. There are people in the Hall of Fame that are not Rangers legends. There are people in the Hall of Fame that pulled on the green and white hoops. and for me, that instantly rules you out to being a Rangers legend.
That is a debate.
That's a debate.
Jeez, oh man, it's 2 minutes to 8 on a Tuesday night. Alan, you want to bring up Kenny Miller. Gary, can you name me a right back for Rangers who has got better numbers than Tav, who has been through as many lows and got back up the way Tav's got back up? Can you name me a better right back in the last 30 years than Tav? No, it's not an easy question, is it?
Well, statistically, no, you can't. His numbers even last season, just their numbers were ridiculous for any fullback anywhere. So, no, I can't. In terms of legend, again, with Alan and Elaine especially, like the Hall of Fame thing, you'll definitely go in there. If you win a league title for Rangers as a captain, you're in there. End of story. I don't think Tavernier is going to be appreciated until he's gone by a lot of fans. Talking about his defensive mistakes, they've been cut out quite a bit over the last year or so. A lot of his mistakes were stupid errors. Like, I remember watching, I was at Ibrox, I think it was Hibs, and we were losing 1-0, and then we equalised, and then straight after that, he sideswiped a Hibs player in the box and gave away a penalty. I think it was maybe 3 seasons ago, and I was like, what are you doing? But those were the mistakes he's cut out as well. So, like I say, I think in like 5-6 years, we'll probably start talking more about him being a legend. But for now, I'm on the fence because I don't like talking about players that way while they play.
Well, look,
someone made a good point there. Someone made a good point there that not yet, because the other way, you know, in terms of Alan was saying, you don't see it because you don't know how it will end. But also, you know, it could end remarkably positively. He could win the league this year, straight, you know, as captain, lead us into the Champions League. You know, Champions League quite clearly. We'll probably reach
We
our
win the
limitations.
Champions League and then
and we'll maybe talk about it.
And then he would be a legend. No, but you never know. Do you know what? See if he's here for 2 or 3 seasons and we go on a league, you know, a league run where we spin a couple of championships in the row. Maybe that does change it, and maybe then we're all sitting going, absolutely, not even a question, like you are now.
I know I just don't understand the stick that Tav gets online on Twitter and Facebook and the rest. I just honestly, his numbers, the amount of games he's available for. I think he's been an absolutely phenomenal football player for this club. But we shall leave it there. Thank you very much, Alan, Elaine, as ever. Gary, thank you very much for making your first appearance. Hope you weren't too nervous.
Probably tell it by speaking.
Thank you to every single person in the comments, every single person watching. Please do like and subscribe and all that nonsense. You know about the Patreon, you know about the YouTube memberships. We will be back. When are we back, Alan?
Yes, we're back.
We will have plenty of content on YouTube and Patreon to keep
You'll
you going.
catch us on Patreon. That's what you want to
catch
say.
us on that Patreon thing. And we'll be back next Tuesday. Am I right, Elaine? Tuesday?
Match reaction.
No.
Yes. No.
Yes.
No.
Yeah, Aberdeen.
This is a really bad ending to a
Aberdeen.
podcast, by the way.
Aberdeen match reaction.
Will we not do a pre-Aberdeen podcast?
We shall.
Patreon?
Yes.
Why not?
We possibly should. Derek's going to be raging that I forgot about him. Oh, this was
There's a rota and everything.
Yes, I apologise to every single person watching. This has been the most shocking ending to a podcast ever. For those of you who are subscribed, the wee community tab, keep your eye on that. I'll be posting loads and loads of updates on that. But I better go before I say something silly. So thank you very, very much for watching, and we shall speak to you sometime. Cheers.